Divorce. It's a harsh word, a sharp sound, like a glass shattering on a hardwood floor, leaving behind shards of what was, and the echoing silence of what is no more. The silence was the hardest part. No more morning coffee rituals, no more playful arguments over the remote control, no more shared laughter over inside jokes. Just me, alone with the ghosts of memories in our once shared home. The house felt strangely oversized now. Furniture, once witnesses to our shared life, now loomed like strangers in the dim light. I moved through the days with a dull ache in my chest, the weight of his absence a tangible thing. I was adrift, unmoored, unsure of how to navigate this new reality where we were no more. I tried to fill the void. Work consumed my days. Books lined my bedside table, each page turned a small victory against the encroaching loneliness. Yet every night the silence would return, a constant reminder of what I had lost. The nights were the worst. The silence would amplify every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window, turning them into echoing reminders of my solitude. One particularly dreary Tuesday evening, I found myself curled up on the couch, a half-eaten bowl of pasta forgotten on the coffee table. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the turmoil within me. Just as I was about to resign myself to another night of solitary misery, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends knew better than to disturb me on a night like this, and delivery food seemed like an unnecessary extravagance. Curiosity piqued. I dragged myself off the couch, my heart pounding with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Peering through the peephole, I was met with a sight that sent a jolt through me, stopping my heart for a beat before sending it racing again. There, on my doorstep, stood a figure I never expected to see again. My ex-husband, Mark. He looked different, older, maybe a bit thinner, with a weary set to his shoulders I hadn't noticed before. He was holding a pizza box in one hand and a six-pack of beer in the other, a sheepish smile playing on his lips. For a moment I simply stared at him, unsure if this was some cruel trick of my imagination or a bizarre, vivid dream. My mind, still reeling from the shock, struggled to process the sight before me. The man who had once shared my life, my bed, my dreams, now stood on the other side of the door, a stranger bearing gifts of greasy comfort food and cheap beer. He shifted awkwardly under my scrutiny, his smile faltering. "Hey," he mumbled, his voice barely audible above the drumming of the rain. "Can I come in?" The sound of his voice, familiar yet distant, broke the spell. A torrent of emotions flooded me. Anger, confusion, a flicker of hope, and a deep, aching sadness. I didn't know what to say, how to react, so I did the only thing I could think of. I opened the door. "Sure," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "Come in." The air crackled with unspoken tension as Mark stepped inside. The familiar scent of his cologne, the one I used to love, hung in the air, a poignant reminder of a life we no longer shared. We moved awkwardly around each other, two strangers in the space we once called home. He placed the pizza and beer on the coffee table, the same table where we had spent countless hours sharing meals, dreams, and arguments. "I figured you wouldn't have eaten," he said, his voice tinged with a hesitant concern that both annoyed and comforted me. We ate in silence, the only sounds the clatter of our forks and the relentless drumming of the rain. Each bite of pizza felt like I was swallowing down 1,000 unspoken words, 1,000 unasked questions. The silence stretched, thick and heavy between us. The ghosts of our past, of the life we once built and then dismantled, crowded the room, unseen, but palpable. As the night progressed and the beer disappeared, the dam of our carefully constructed composure began to crumble. We started talking tentatively at first about the weather, work, anything but the elephant in the room, us. But the past was a shadow we couldn't outrun. Jokes about our disastrous first date tumbled out, followed by shared memories of our honeymoon in Italy, the birth of our dog, Max, who, ironically, now lived with Mark. Each story, each shared laugh, was a painful reminder of what we had lost, of the love that had turned to ashes. There were tears too, raw, unfiltered tears as we finally allowed ourselves to voice the pain, the anger, the regret that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. We didn't shy away from the hard topics, from the mistakes we had made, the words left unsaid, the dreams left unfulfilled. We talked until the early hours of the morning, the pizza box long empty, the beer cans piling up on the floor. It wasn't pretty. There were accusations, tears, and moments of raw, unfiltered anger. We were like two wounded animals, circling each other, baring our teeth, but also perhaps seeking solace in our shared pain. But there were also moments of tenderness, unexpected bursts of laughter, a shared recognition of the love that had once bound us together. It was as if, stripped bare of all pretense, we were finally able to see each other clearly, not as exes burdened by the baggage of our past, but as two flawed, hurting individuals who had once loved each other deeply. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room, a heavy silence fell between us. We both knew it was time for him to leave. The night had been a cathartic release, a necessary exorcism of our shared ghosts. We stood on the doorstep, the awkwardness back in full force. He looked at me, his eyes mirroring the mix of emotions swirling within me. "I should go," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Yeah," I replied, my throat tight. "Thanks for the pizza." It was a stupid thing to say, woefully inadequate for the complex tapestry of emotions we had woven that night, but it was all I could manage. Mark's unexpected visit was a turning point for me. It didn't magically erase the pain of our divorce or mend the broken pieces of our past, but it did offer something far more valuable: closure. We had faced our demons, acknowledged our mistakes, and in doing so, had finally begun to let go. In the weeks that followed, the silence in my house no longer felt as deafening. It was still there, of course, but it was different now. It was the silence of acceptance, of peace, of the understanding that some chapters in our lives, no matter how beautiful or painful, must eventually come to an end. Life, as it always does, moved on. The pain of our divorce gradually softened around the edges, leaving behind a bittersweet ache, like the memory of a faded love letter tucked away in a drawer. I poured myself into my work, reconnected with old friends, and even started taking salsa lessons, a secret dream I had long abandoned. The empty stage of my life was no longer a source of fear, but a blank canvas, full of possibilities. I was free to write my own story, to create a new narrative, one filled with hope, laughter, and maybe someday even love again. The future stretched before me, uncertain yet full of promise, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace it.